So, in today's video, we're going to do another easy fix video. For those of you who might be new around here, occasionally I take a break from tools and gadgets and I do what I would call an easy fix. And that's just something DIY I do myself, either little projects here and there. Doesn't necessarily have to do with mechanic stuff, but, stuff that I do because I'm handy and, not everyone is handy. So I kind of encourage you guys to get out there, try to do stuff yourself, save a little bit of money sometimes. You look useful. Chicks dig handy, guys. I don't know. I'm just kind of babbling here. But last night me and my wife were getting ready to go out to dinner. We jumped in the old Tacoma and I hit the starter ignition there, and it just gave me the old click, which usually means a dead battery. So we jumped in her car, went to dinner. But what I'm getting at is, so I'm going to replace the battery in my 2019 Toyota Tacoma. That battery is roughly 5 years old, if the math's working out right. So 5 years, it's about what you would expect to get out of a battery. I've gotten 15 years out of batteries before, but it's just the way life works out sometimes. So me personally, I've probably, if you said I did 1,000 batteries, that would seem about right. Over my lifetime, I probably do at least 50 batteries a year in my day-to-day. And it's more than just, pull the old battery out, put the new battery in, and you're done. There's other checks that I like to do, especially because when I'm doing it professionally, it's a little embarrassing when you change a battery for a no start, and then the next day or the next week, you get another call for the same no start because the battery's dead again, and then you got to redo all the work that you did before. So, so that's basically what I'm coming at it from, is just a professional's way of replacing a battery. And again, someone's paying me, my company, $160 an hour for me to replace their battery. I might as well do a good job on the thing. So, we'll head out to the old Tacoma there. We'll replace the battery. I'll walk you through the different steps that I would do on a regular basis as far as replacing battery goes, checks and things like that. It's just kind of my system of doing things. I always find that when you're doing something repetitively, it's good to be efficient and kind of same way every time, and that way there you don't skip anything, and it gets done quicker that way. So let's head out to the truck and get into it. So as always, it's a good idea to confirm the issue. I kind of know the guy. He seems pretty trustworthy, but we'll check it anyway. Yeah, that's definitely struggling. Now let's go under the hood. Alright, we're under the hood now. We're just going to check the voltage on the battery. Just confirming that the battery is actually the problem. Not all no starts are caused by dead batteries. And we got 10.52-ish volts. That generally tells me that we dropped a cell in the battery. Now gloves on because we're playing with acid. One thing you can do with these style batteries, you can pop these tops off of them and actually check the electrolyte inside the individual cells. You can top it off if they're low. Thing is, with an automotive battery like this, there's really no charging or discharging that should occur that caused that electrolyte to boil off. So if you are feeling it, there's probably an indication of your battery having problems. If you do feel it, which again, just replace the battery at that point in time, but distilled water is what you want to do. So as always, I always like to jump a battery that I know is dead. I got this here NOCO GB40 that I've been using for a while, testing. Did a video on it not too long ago. Black to negative, of course, red to positive. Over here we are turned on, and we're going to crank it up and just check what the charging voltage is. Alright, well, it started up just fine, so let's take the jumper back off. Let's hook up the multimeter and see what kind of charging voltage we got. And we're sitting at around 13.9, so that's good. Now, generally speaking, on a 12 volt automotive situation, you're going to want anywhere between above 13 to below 15 is usually the sweet zone. If it's above 15 or at 15, it might be overcharging. Below it, your alternator might not be putting out what it should be. So at this point, we're pretty much sure that this battery is hooped. Just one extra check. We're going to put a load tester on it. Now this is a toaster style load tester. It's got a resistive load up in here. Puts 100 amps on the battery. You hit it for 10 seconds, and if it can hold it, it's good. If it can't hold it, it's no good. And yeah, you need a new battery. These are important for when you're kind of on a battery. If a battery can hold 100 amps for 10 seconds, it's probably good, especially if you've done all the other checks. I have seen in the past people, well, not in the past, but I've had in the past those digital ones you hook on the thing and it does its little magical stuff. I've gotten a couple of false good readings off of those, and yeah, and if it gives me a false good, I don't trust it, and I went back to this style, and like I said, I've never had a false good come off of one of these. So simply what you do is, again, positive and negative, hit this switch right here, puts the load on it, and we'll see what it does. If it kicks down into bad, it's bad. And it would definitely be considered bad without even holding it for 10 seconds. So I'm 100% sure that this battery is bad. So we know the battery is bad, so let's get it out of here. 10 millimeters all around. Get the thing there. Get those all cut loose. The negative out of the way. The positive off. Let's get this turd out of here. Well, now that we got the battery out at this point in time, it's a pretty good idea to clean your terminals. Mine aren't too bad. Even if they don't look bad, it's a good idea just to give them a good once over to break up the oxidation on them. It is aluminum after all. I got this tool here. This is a cheap one. I have a nice one. I can't find it at this point in time, so I'm going to run with what I got. But yeah, just simply stick it in here. If you have a lot of corrosion, they do sell battery cleaner. Just as good would be baking soda. Even just some really hot water will work in most cases. And yeah, here we go. Now let's drop the replacement battery in. This just so happens to be a Toyota forklift battery. I looked at it, and the only difference is that the old one was 580 cold cranking amps and this one's 550. Usually with electronics you can go plus or minus 10%, and we're definitely within that 10%. And good news is, if it doesn't work out, I know a mechanic who could fix the problem for me. Works out pretty good for me. But yeah, another benefit too, as a side note, is that I get this for cost as compared to the other battery, which I would have to pay full price for. So yeah, just drop this guy in. And what I always like to do too, lead also oxidizes, so it's a good idea to kind of give these a good once over to knock that oxidation off, get the thing started off on the right foot. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but most vehicles will have a chassis ground right next to it. Make sure that isn't all corroded up. Sometimes the corrosion will leak over to there, and that could also be a problem for a no start, but that's not what we're talking about today. So yeah, so let's secure the battery in place. I will say too that this battery I had in my truck is a little bit less wide than the other one, but all the other dimensions are fine, so I'm not complaining. The price is right. So let's check something now that a lot of people overlook when they're replacing their battery, and that would be a parasitic draw on the battery, or parasitic load. Basically what that is something in the circuit that's putting a load on the battery when the engine's off, and it causes the battery to die because it's constantly being drawn down on. Normally for parasitic loads, you don't want to see anything more than 80 milliamps. So keep that in mind when you're doing this test, to make sure all your doors are closed, dome lights are off. If you got a hood light, make sure you unplug that, because that'll add to the parasitic load. And yeah, so basically what you do is take your meter, switch it over to the amps plug there, come up to 10 amps, because you never know how much amps it is actually sitting on there. And then what we'll do is, got your negative terminal hooked up over here, so that's all good to go. Positive or negative on here, it doesn't matter, it'll just read negative if you got it backwards. And then you touch the positive to the positive terminal on the battery, and basically you're putting your meter in series with the battery, which allows you to read the amps. And it'll spike a little bit when it first comes on, because everything's just waking up. And after a couple of seconds, it'll come down to something that's more reasonable. And we're at 4,000 milliamps, 5,000, bouncing back and forth. So yeah, I'll call that good. Now at this point in time, if you actually did have a parasitic load on your battery, that is a whole other video as far as diagnosing that. One quick thing from personal experience, parasitic loads are usually from the alternator. You get a diode that goes bad, and the alternator just turns into a little heater. One way to diagnose that is just to unplug every wire off of the alternator, and if it goes away, well, then you know it's your alternator. Another thing you could do, if it's a cold day and the engine's cold, you actually touch the alternator, and if it's a little bit warm, because now it's turning itself into a heater, it's another indication that you got a parasitic draw on your alternator. Another common thing is aftermarket alarms. They're good for doing that. Stuck lamps or dome lights in your vehicle, stuck brake switches. Your brakes are on all the time, but like I said, that's a whole other video. Just giving you a couple of tips if you do run into that. So at this point in time, we confirmed that our battery is bad. We confirmed that the alternator is charging the battery, and we also confirmed that there isn't a parasitic load that's killing the battery. So we can put this battery in here and be pretty much 100% sure that this will fix the problem with the no start. I will say, now that we're putting this back together, I don't know if I did it in the beginning of the video, because I do so many of these and I'm careful, but as a rule of thumb, get food out of there. As a rule of thumb, you should always take the negative off first when you're removing it, and then put the positive back on first when you're putting everything back together, so that way there you don't have any arcing problems. Like I said, sometimes it's do as I say, not as I do. And I always like to kind of spread these terminals apart a little bit, just to make sure I'm getting down all the way on the things. So put the positive on first. The reason is to, like, if this wasn't a plastic wrench, if this was actually a metal wrench, and that negative was hooked up and I'm sitting here wrenching on it and I touch something ground on the frame, it's gonna arc out. I'll know when I edit this if I did it the right way or not. Again, I do probably 50 batteries a year, so I'm careful. And these you don't want to tighten up too much. They are just aluminum. Same thing goes with the lead ones. I just kind of snug them, make sure I can't rotate them, and if I can't rotate them, that's usually good enough. There's probably a torque spec for it somewhere that someone really cares about. I'm just not the type of person to care about that, as I've done it a million times. Again, spread it, push it on there, and torque it down. That's nice and tight as a jet flies over my head. And one last thing I like to do is do a little corrosion prevention on it. I use this stuff, NCP2. battery corrosion preventative. Some people like to use the little washer things. I find that they don't do much of anything as far as preventing corrosion, and this stuff stays on the battery. It doesn't go away. And basically it's just to, one, keep the corrosion off of the terminals, two, keep the corrosion off of the threads, so if you do have to replace a battery in the future, it doesn't, the screws won't get jammed, or the bolts won't get jammed on the thing. Yeah, then you just kind of go through here and lather everything up. And this can is starting to get a little empty. There we go. And one last thing I like to do, if the battery doesn't have the little dots that you can remove to let you know when you replaced it, I just put the date on it, which is 6/30/24. And that helps for warranty situations. I know when it was replaced last. I know how long the battery lasts, you know what I mean? It just makes it a little bit more convenient for me. So last thing to do is get these tools out of here so they don't fall inside the engine. And we'll fire it up and see if we did a good job. Well, that certainly cranked over a lot better. Again, voltage, 20 volts DC. Negative, positive. And we're still charging it just short of 14 volts. And now we're looking at 12.9 without the engine running. That's just a surface charge because the alternator was hitting on it a little bit. That'll come back down to probably 12.7, 12.6, give or take a little bit. But yeah, so there we go. So there we go. We replaced the battery in my 2019 Tacoma. I think we did a pretty good job. Two little notes I want to address. I'm going to put a caption in the video just so anybody watching the video will know. When I was removing the battery, I loosened the positive terminal, then loosened the negative, then remove the negative, then the positive. The right thing to do is to loosen the negative, remove it, and then work on the positive. Reason being, if the negative's hooked up when you're wrenching on the positive, you could short the wrench out the frame, cause sparks. I've done this hundreds of times. I was using a power ratchet. There wasn't any place for it to arc out, so I just hit it with the ratchet. You know, it wasn't swinging. It's a plastic ratchet, so even if I was, it still wouldn't be a problem. But it should be said that that's the correct way to do it. And another thing, when I was reviewing the footage, the focus kind of sucks. Sorry about that. It's when I'm recording outside with this camera, the viewfinder is kind of, I get the framing, but I can't really see what the camera is actually trying to focus on. So it tends to focus on the closest thing, which was the fender, and it just, I think we get the point across either way. So we'll run with it, but like I said, just a little thing I noticed. So now, all of that aside, yeah, so we replaced the battery. It seems like it's good. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it's not just, for me, it's not just a matter of pulling the old battery out, putting a new battery on, and hitting start and then getting on your way. My company, I think, charges 150, 160 bucks an hour for me. So if I'm going to go out there and replace your battery, I'm going to make sure that the battery is the only problem. And like I said, that's how I've always done it for the past few hundred batteries. It's my system. It works for me. And I never get a call the next day that the battery I just replaced is dead again. Or next week, the battery I replaced is dead again. And yeah, that's just the way I do it. So you might have a different way of doing it, but this way works for me. And I never get called back on dead batteries. So awesome me, I guess. But yeah, if I can find links, some of the tools I use in this video I've featured on this channel before. I'll put links in the bottom if you guys are interested in any of that stuff. And yeah, I think that's about it for this video. Questions, comments, concerns, leave them down in the old comment section. I'll do my best to get back to you. And I'd like to thank you for watching. There you go.